But first, in 2008, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney traveled to Washington to the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, to make this announcement.
I entered this race because I love America. And because I love America, in this time of war, I feel I have to now stand aside for our party and for our country.
Well, this year, Governor Romney went back to CPAC, leading many people to wonder if the former presidential candidate, might be, a future presidential candidate. In his speech, he sharply criticized President Obama.
His energy should have been focused on fixing the economy, creating jobs, succeeding in our fight against radical violent jihad in Afghanistan and Iraq, and keeping us safe. Instead, he applied his time and his political capital to his ill-conceived takeover of health care and to building his personal popularity in foreign countries. He failed to focus, and so he failed.
Mitt Romney has a new book out called No Apology, The Case for American Greatness. If you'd like to speak with him, give us a call, 800-989-8255. Email us, talk@npr.org. Mitt Romney's been kind enough to join us in our bureau in New York today. Governor Romney, good to have you with us on Talk of the Nation.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be with you.
And by our estimation, the Iowa caucus is just 23 months away.
You guys are counting, not me.
Not you. So you don't want to make any news today?
I'm afraid not. I'll be thinking about things like that probably well after the November elections. This is a time for us to concentrate on getting some good people elected this November and, in my opinion, getting Washington back on track.
And a lot of people think Washington is broken, and broken, due to the dire state of partisanship in both parties today.
Well, actually, during my campaign, I had big signs up that I would place at my rallies that said, Washington is broken. So I concur with the sentiment. By the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with people standing up and saying no to bad ideas. And I think that the president's health care plan is a bad idea. It has not been put together in the way that the American people support. And I applaud saying no to that. But the thing I think is a real concern is that we have massive challenges in this country, particularly relating to our economy and getting people back to work, that we have not dealt with honestly and directly, and we've got to do that, or America could end up becoming far less economically successful down the road than even we're suffering right now.
In your book, though, you say you do agree with the idea of universal health care and that the government has to play a big part in that.
Well, actually, one of the things I learned when I was governor is that we have universal health care in America already. Everybody in this country, if they become ill, goes to the emergency room even without insurance and is able to receive, under the law, free care. What we decided was it was a better idea to help people get insurance than just to hand out free care at hospitals, which was very expensive and oftentimes came after somebody was already quite ill. So we found a way, we think pretty good way, to get all of our citizens insured. We think it's going to improve their health care. Not a perfect plan, but we believe a lot better than what we had in the past. And unlike the president's plan, ours was a state program, not a federal program, so each state could create their own ideas. We did not have to raise taxes, and we did not cut Medicare.
And you would urge other states do it on a state level if you were someday just possibly maybe elected president?
Well, that's been my position for some time, which is in terms of helping people get insured, the best thing the federal government could do would be to provide the funds they already do provide to the states to help the low-income individuals who are getting health care. Let them get those funds and use the funds to subsidize the purchase of those who need some help buying health insurance. But the other problem in health care really is going to require some work at the federal and state level, which is how do you rein in the excessive cost of health care? And having government take it over is really not the right answer. Cost controls just don't work. We need to get health care to work more like a market where the patient and the doctor have entirely different incentives than they do right now.
Ken?
Governor Romney, right now, as we're speaking, President Obama is having this kind of quasi-news conference, quasi-rally, pep rally, announcing what he's going to do with health care. And obviously what it probably means is pushing it through reconciliation, which means, the House will vote for the Senate version, and then reconciliation will be a majority of the Senate rather than the magic 60 we've seen in the past. What do you make of that tactic?
I think for something as important as people's health care, which is, frankly, one of the most important aspects of someone's life, that to have a highly partisan bill which is vehemently objected by well over half of the American public who have expressed that view even in Massachusetts, that's a real problem for the country and probably a political challenge as well for the president. I think some of his colleagues are going to feel like they're walking the plank over this. I just don't think it's going to stand. Even if they pursue the nuclear option, I think you're going to find the American people will vote out those that did so, and that you'll be able to rein back in the what I think is a very excessive overplay of its hand by the federal government.
Well, we'll give listeners a chance to talk with former Governor of Massachusetts Mitt Romney. 800-989-8255. Email talk@npr.org. Daniel on the line from Boston.
Hi, Governor Romney. Thank you for answering questions. What I want to ask you about is you're talking about the health care plan, Obama's plan, as if it's a very radical plan, but it seems to me that it's very similar to what was passed in Massachusetts, with sort of things like caps on ban for pre-existing conditions, with mandates for individuals to have insurance. And I want to see, how is it possible that you could support the plan in Massachusetts and still talk about how great of a plan it was just a couple of seconds ago, but be so opposed to Obama's health plan? It seems inconsistent and hypocritical to me. I just want to ask about that.
Well, pretty straightforward, and that is that, first of all, we worked our plan out on a bipartisan basis. Republicans and Democrats came together. We had differing perspectives, but we worked out something where we both felt it was a positive advance. And so when it went before the legislature, and we have 200 people in our Senate and House combined, only 2 people voted no. The business community supported it. The healthcare community did. The advocates for the poor did. We had pretty broad consensus. And I think if you're going to change something like healthcare, you need to have built that kind of consensus. Secondly, we approached our needs on a state basis so that we could fashion a program that worked for Massachusetts. And what is working in Massachusetts would almost certainly not work in Texas, because they have a very different number of uninsured in a state like Texas. So the plans need to be crafted state by state. We also did not require increased taxes. And the president's plan requires a very substantial increase in taxes, almost $500 billion. And perhaps most importantly for our senior citizens, we certainly wouldn't have thought of cutting Medicare as part of the program to pay for our health care program. The president's instead, of course, cuts Medicare by some $500 billion. Finally, I'd note, there's no government insurance in the Massachusetts plan. All of the insurance that's provided that people are able to obtain is from the private insurance companies that already exist in the state.
There's no government insurance in the president's plan either.
Yes, that's right, and that's, in my view, the right course. He pulled out the public option. I think that was the right pullback. There's no question in my mind that there'll be an effort to try and stick it back in at some point. But early on, that was the most distinctive difference.
All right, Daniel, thanks very much for the phone call. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the answer.
Bye-bye. Let's go next to this is Ben. Ben with us from Columbus.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Hello, Governor Romney. My question to you is I just wanted to have you comment on about 3 weeks ago we had a report released that said that the president's stimulus plan increased economic activity here over the last year from about 1.5 to 3.5%. And just based on your comments at the convention, you said that he had failed in terms of help stimulating the economy. And I just wanted to hear your comments based on the report that we've seen that he did have some impact on the economy.
And the convention, you mean the CPAC conference?
Right.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Neil.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and the answer is this, which is that when the president came to Congress and said, look, this is an emergency measure, you need to pass this stimulus bill, it's going to cost an extraordinary $787 billion. Nothing of that scale ever passed that I know of in our congressional history. He said, look, if you pass this, we'll be able to hold unemployment at 8%. If you don't, it's going to go to 10%. And so they passed it, and it went to 10%. Millions of additional Americans are out of work, lost their jobs, even though that extraordinarily expensive bill was passed. Now our kids and grandkids will have to pay the interest and ultimately the principal back on this obligation. It's an enormous burden long-term for our economy, and in that regard, it failed. Now, at the same time, we all recognize that the American economy will turn back. If the president's going to get the credit for the economy turning around, well, that's a pretty easy job, because ultimately the economy will turn around. There's nothing in America that suggests that a recession stays in on a permanent basis. The private sector reignites, inventories are rebuilt, and of course, throwing $787 billion out the window does have a stimulative effect, but it has not in any way been as successful as the president had promised or had hoped. and it's not as effective as it could have been had it been targeted in a way to actually create immediate jobs rather than funding, in many cases, programs that will take a long time to pay out.
Ben, thanks very much for the call. Appreciate it.